8 part 1. So far I wasn't able to solve it using ChatGPT and OpenAI API, using a little bit more crafted messages than what it's possible in ChatGPT. At the moment, none of that help, and we ended up with having some solution that it's looking promising, but we need to iterate a little bit on it and probably read a little bit more carefully the instructions, because so far I was trying to do this particular day and the previous days with having a rough grasp of the task, but not going to the smallest details. The idea of that was going to the smallest details and understanding everything step by step. It's almost as writing the program for that to do it, and I was trying to avoid as much as possible. However, in this task, because the way of uncertainty and also the language used to be a little bit confusing and so on, that unfortunately seems to be required. Let's dive in. For everyone that is joining us for the first time and haven't seen my previous videos, what I'm doing is having the solutions of Advent of Code 2021 implemented in Go. As I mentioned previously, I'm not professionally Go developer, but I know enough Go to write programs. I have already done by myself half of Advent of Code 2022 and 10 days or 11 days in 2020 in Go by myself and so on, and in this sense I'm knowledgeable enough to correct mistakes, to look at possible other solutions. However, in no means good Go developer. And we structure our program very simply. We have every day and part a separate folder. We have our input data, we have test data from the given example, we have all of the prompts that we have asked, including the responses from the either OpenAI API, because we're using either this playground or one Elixir Live book in which we're crafting the messages ourselves and asking. So far we used that only once, because I wasn't familiar at that point that we can use this interface. Although this interface is a little bit limited, because we can have only assistant user messages and system messages. However, this approach here allows us to specify different type of system messages, one for the common context, but also having example of user reply and example of assistant reply, which can be considered as a part of the system message, which it's not possible in the UI provided from OpenAI. The other thing is, I think here the limitation, although I'm not sure completely for that, for our input message is 2048 tokens, and we're limited to 4,000 tokens when we in general, which includes our input tokens and the output tokens. However, I think when we make this request, we can shift the size of our input token, for example, to make a request with 3,000 tokens and get simply 1,000 tokens as a reply, and so on. However, so far in our attempts to get to solution, we have this one approach here that I save in this main got file that's in my GitHub repository, and you can look at it and have more or less I like this kind of solution. However, after a bit of iteration, we get another one that this time was mapping the using simply a map from a strings that should produce our digit for each of the boards, and we had these boards to go back to the task. We want to search for specific numbers. Our final goal is to count in our input data how many times 1, 4, 7 and 8 appears, and we have from one side we have all of these digit boards that are including the letters from A to F, including both, and having them as a simple string like here, B, S, F and so on, and getting that should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and counting how many of them are in our input for the board, and we have 4 numbers, and we need to count from these 4 numbers in all of our input how many 1s, 4s, 7 and 8 we have found. And at first glance that looks easy. If the boards were correct, we should simply need to grab this number and to see, okay, that corresponds to this board or this one or this one or this one or this one, and identify if that's 0, 1, etc. However, our boards are broken, and the tricky part is how exactly they're broken. That's the part that we weren't able to identify and accommodate for in our code. Now what I'm thinking is to try to solve the problem assuming that our boards are not broken, and I think the solutions that we already have gotten lastly from asking the OpenAI playground was this one that seems the most promising. Here we simply have one eventual correct mapping, and we would like to simply assume, okay, we have the correct mapping and we have the correct digits here, and simply to try to count with the correct mapping, and after that iterating and focusing on the problem. If we didn't if we didn't have any broken rows, any broken mappings between these diodes that are representing the numbers, and once we have that, simply to take in account the broken conditions and see what we can do. However, I again didn't look some other solutions and so on, and haven't spent any time of reading here the conditions of the digits and so on. Why I haven't done that? If you look for some videos to see how to solve the problem in a really structured way and implement it well, that's not the video for you. You shouldn't look at that. There are hundreds, thousands of videos that are showing how to solve these problems in Rust. They have it in Go, you can find in Java, C#, Ruby, Python, billions of videos and so on, and they do a perfect job in structuring that much better than everything that I can do. The purpose of this is to try to use ChatGPT being the OpenAI API, and do that using these tools, not by us going too much to the details of the task, but trying to use these tools to effectively develop a strategy that we can at least have simplified the content to make it easily understandable for us, and correcting their programs and so on. Again, we are not looking for them to solve the problem on its own. We correcting the code and so on, and analyzing it, how much of it's correct and so on, and we will continue doing that. However, let's try to do the first. We'll continue iterating with this code that we get from our final prompt, and we will probably create a copy of that, and let's I have that as our part 1 failed. That was our initial attempt. I will keep it here simply for the people that want to follow what exactly we have done, having all of the prompts, and it's connected with my video that I uploaded, these failure attempts. And now we'll try to have here our working solution. Let's call it revision 1. And in this file we'll delete this one. We're not interested from it. We'll try to iterate to this one that we have from the previous and try to solve it. As we can see already, we have some output value that it's not used, we couldn't compile the program, and so on. But let's see how far away we're from compiling the program and having specific problems. Couldn't find that. Okay, that's absolutely fine. For the time being, we can have it as that, and probably at the end of the video I will rename it. If we run the program, we're getting 1. Let's see how we are parsing the file. The first thing is we need to have from each line to have of the digit boards that's representing 1, that's representing the other, and having them split correctly. So far what I can see from here, we are scanning the file, we are splitting the board correctly, and here in this patterns scene we need to have all these patterns. Let's see if that's the case. Empty print line pattern scene. Okay, it seems absolutely correct, and here we have output values that are so to say our that should be our and we're using the test file. That should be this fdg, etc. And let's see, is that the case? Yes, that's the case. We need them to be split exactly in the same way as we have the other one split. Okay, now we have them split as a array of input, and the index of this array should correspond to which number we have. If we iterate very naively without using this unique pattern scene and so on, we imagine that out of this part what we want to do is here in this part we already have our patterns, want to iterate to them and say, okay, I want to count our stuff if it's there. And the first thing is that I want to double check is, okay, I'm 1, am I 4, am I, or I mean, it will be hard to be all of them at the same time. 1, 4, 7, was it 7? Yeah, 7 and 8. Okay, perfect. I'm 7 and I'm 8. As simple as that. If I'm one of this one, I want to check if firstly see, let's use for that strings I think you probably can compare the pattern seen going to all the patterns. We would want to see, okay, which input values is this one. Let's ask Google for better approach. Try that. Sorry about that. Not Google, but Bing. Google couldn't help with that. How could I find the index of given string and I for it in array of strings in Go? Let me go here and simply get to our prompt. As you can see, our first attempt was very involved, and for that I decide prompt 1 and I'm saying that's Bing, and the answer for our thing is let's chat. What is this? It's saying that we can use search string functions. It's telling us to simply use this solution. Oh, now the limit is up to 10 messages. Since we start our attempts, here were 6, after that 8, now we have 10 messages. Not interested of that. And how we can use that? Sort any no, I don't want to have my string sort. If it present, could you that does that for not please give me a simple example how to use that. Our second prompt, when let's not prompt to Bing, perfect, and we have answer, and the answer is in this Python line of command. Okay, which is find index -1. Okay, very standard way of doing that. It's saying that couldn't find specific function, and it's actually giving us. Sorry about that. Then it should be fine. And in this case, we have our Go program, and we would like to use this stuff instead of our whooping. Here what I was trying to do, I actually want to whoop through for value, and we're looking in the range of values. I'm getting here value, which is absolutely fine. We don't care which value where it is. We have this thing, and if the index is any of these, we can use our already crafted count with the index and simply to increase it. Okay, in this way, if everything was correctly, we'll simply count for each of the lines how much we get. Well, here we'll have this unique pattern seen and so on. This stuff will not really need to do this stuff, and will not of this decoded stuff and so on. What we would need to do at the end is to have this in print line, in which we'll have our count simply summed up, and that should more or less give us however we'll need to do that here at the end. And where we can see that we have only for numbers that are doing that whenever we actually expect to have 26 in this demo example. And let's keep our program really super simple. We always can go back to in this another, so to say, better approach. Let's delete this one and let's try to focus on the part that is actually we have these patterns. Do we use these unique patterns and so on? We have our counts. Okay, that would be what would we do if the boards were, so to say, correct. And let's in this case craft we have all this mapping and so on, PNC, that is unique patterns. Do we ever use these unique patterns? Not really. Let's see if it's running. It's running correctly. Okay. For the moment, we have this kind of solution. What I'm thinking is again let's go to our systems. Here we're asking with ChatGPT model, we're making our request and getting the message content and having it output correctly. I think that's very reasonable. What we want to add here is we have our context that we're a prominent competitive programmer. We have already using it. Sorry about that. Let me rejoin the session. No worries. We want to that's demo response. What we use here, we want to copy it, and let's go at the bottom and or before debugging we couldn't use really this one, so delete that. And here we have code, we have the block, we have day 8 part 1. We copy more or less the structure. Of course, in our task we don't have this heavy task. We have another one that is even worse. That's our string. Here we have already a program. We want first to give a context similar to this system here. However, we want to have also the context that we have written a program and we were not sure how to accommodate the part for randomness and errors up here, and to see if this model would be able to do it for us. Okay, back to our program. Here again, we're going to that part. Tac. We're deleting all that. As we can see, because how verbose Go is, its problems can get quite big, but has the advantage that our code is easier to understand than most of very compact code, especially if you're not a person very familiar with the language. Okay, that's what the system gave us, and now we will say, okay, you know what, our requirement here we're adding the previous input that we use this approach for part 2, the previous problem. However, the moment will have completely different message. And here we should craft some kind of context. We'll not have this part. We'll have this part as a input, but we will not have the problematic part. We'll keep the one that we're saying, okay, that's how our stuff looks like. And again, to remind to people that are not knowing how the OpenAI API works, we have user or assistant, and we can create a combo of what user asks, what assistant asks user, and so on, and having crafted conversation, and then ask our final question and submitting that. And we can use the system context to give some background. Here what we are doing, we're saying that you're a prominent competitive programmer. In our previous prompts we were even adding some having this kind of context. You are given a problem to solve, that you're invited on programming competition. We don't need this competition thingy, and we're saying we want to cut a little bit on cost. You are given a problem to solve, that's the problem. And we need to also include this part that you're counting. times do digits 1, 4 and 8 appear? And probably here we'll want to in this kind of info that is showing this stuff, and let's have that like a text txt. And let's read a little bit to try to construct the part, because at the moment we have, okay, we ask with simplified part of the task that it's assuming that everything's working fine and so on. We get from you this kind of program that's a little bit have redundant parts, probably to cut on cost and delete these ones, and we are getting some output. Now it's the time to say your previous program works great, but the requirement changed. Could you rewrite the program taking count the new requirements and here we're going back to and that are the new requirements, so to say, and we'll submit that our content, our role, and so on. Let me add that to our new prompts and say 3 prompt 3 using response payload. We want to have this payload like that. The payload is not yet ready. With HTTP request because we haven't crafted our final part, and also we need to have the message and messages. We're using the turbo model. Should we change which model we are using? Because I was using then this stable model, not the turbo one that it's so to say changing. That's example from OpenAI. I probably should use this. I was using specific one and have this max for the token and this endpoint. API OpenAI version 1 chat completions. Let's and now let's ask Bing before to ask thank you. Could you help me with for me getting very warm because some guessing what before to get to prompt, and I have prompt tree Bing, and let's see what Bing will tell us when we ask this. I'm wanting to warm up. Sure, I would happy to help. Can you provide me with more details about the coding challenge, in which part you find confusion? Okay, that's what Bing tells us. Here is the here and for description for the coding challenge, blah blah blah. Let's skip that because we're quite limited of how much we can give to Bing as a input size. We're limited to certain number of characters. We might hit this limit. Yeah, we hit that. Let me reduce some of this stuff. Don't really need all of these ones. Probably having like this one should be enough. And 3 examples. Let's see how that will fit. Again, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much. How far away we are. Okay, let's ask to make that. And after that we can ask more specific questions. I think added. Okay, let's its own unique mapping. It is correct. The part that I do get is this specific part, and here let's have beans. Let's copy it. Answer again. I think Bing is copying correctly from Bing. And which part I don't get correctly? Blah blah, we don't. The problem is that blah blah blah. I don't get how exactly. Okay, let's see the answer and what. Let's unpack the answer for Bing and see if that will actually help us with solving the problem. This part of the challenge describes how the signal wires, and probably it's better to read it in Bing. This part of the challenge describes how the signal wires and segments are mixed up on each display. The submarine is still trying to display number by producing output of a signal wires through G, but those wires are connected to a segment randomly. This means that even if you know which signal wires are turned on, you can't tell which segments are turned on without additional information. Okay, I know that I have these 4 outputs. In our case here, I know that I have this bad boy, but I couldn't see any corresponding display of it. Although I know this one, I don't really know to which actually display maps to. Okay. Which is exactly why we're getting the wrong answer. And now it's the suggestion how we can determine the correct mapping. On segments, for each display you need to observe the changing signals for a while and make note of all 10 unique signals patterns you see. Those signals patterns correspond to 10 different ways the submarines try to render a digit using the current wire segment connection. For example, if you see that only signal wires B and G are turned on, it must mean that the segment C and F are meant to be on because one is the only digit that uses 2 segments. However, with just this information alone, you still can't tell which wire B and G does to which segment C and F. You need to collect more information by observing more signal pattern. Okay, for example, if you see the only signal wires P and G are turned on, if I look here at the input, P and G, I will know that the B and the G should be either B should be here or here and corresponding for G, because I know that is 1. In this way I will know that this combo of this new one should correspond to this new mapping, and I can do that for 1, 4, 7 and 8, because 8 will always involve all of them. 1 will involve always 2 of them. In the case of 8, actually it doesn't matter that they're mixed. I will simply need to see, okay, is that, do I have here one that is with 8 with 7. Sorry about not with 8 but with 7 digits, and that will mean that if I look for D, that's 7, and I look for a regex 0 to 7, I have it 6 twice. Can I have 0 to 1? I want to have it exactly 7. There's anyway. But if I have it with this number of letters, I can decide which one exactly I am. Here I have this CNG, which means that I can know, okay, here I have twos twice, here again twos twice, here again twos twice. In here it's my twos again twice, and so on. In this sense, I can count the twos and the eights simply having, instead of here matching, okay, I have this pattern I can see if the value is 7, why I don't need to do any of that. I'll need simply to increase for 8, because I know that, okay, that cannot be anything else. If the value is 2, I can increase for once, and let me how would it 15. I'm almost getting there. Now I can count the 2s, the 7s. The only thing that I need to know is 7s also have only 3, and there is no other enforcer, the only one that have 4s. Okay, it seems that in this case at least this how to say so to say doom solution will work for part 1. I think without collecting any additional information. I'm pretty sure in part 2 they will ask us for the entire input and trying to actually recover that. But if we do not do any of that and simply try to do the original task, we have this 5 to 5. I think that would be enough. Okay, we solve it, so to say. I mean, it's very particular, not really complete solution, because here is exploiting that we have we don't need that, don't need any of this. We don't even need to pass anything to count how many we have. We need simply to split that to have it here and to scan the file line by line, count them and add and sum them up. That's more than enough to have a working solution. And we don't need to craft any of that. I think this revision, we were able to solve that without thinking so deeply, only by using Bing helping us with pointing on the important part. I'm actually very impressed, and let's see how we'll go on the second part, which I would expect to be significantly harder, because then we'll need to correct by iterating on this solution. And hopefully see you in that video, and bye for now.